Hello and welcome to this little island amid the ocean that YouTube is. With the upcoming European Parliament elections in June 2024, I thought it could be interesting for those who must vote, and for those just curious about it, to do a video regarding what is the European Parliament, what does it do, how it influences on decisions, and how does the voting system work. So without further ado, let's delve together in the European Union sphere. The European Union has a multitude of institutions under its big umbrella. But you know how in Greek mythology we have the three fates? Well, let's say the EU has a sort of four decision-making fates that lead the EU administration: the European Commission, the European Council, the Council of the European Union, and the European Parliament. As the European Union website states, the European Commission represents the common interests of the EU, and as its main executive body, it uses the right of initiative to propose new laws. The European Council is composed of heads of state or government of EU member states, and it defines the general political direction and priorities of the EU. Whilst the Council of the European Union, or just Council, represents the governments of EU countries and, alongside the European Parliament, is the main decision-making body of the EU. Now you may wonder, if we've seen who represents the member states' government interests, then who directly represents the citizens of the EU countries? The answer is the European Parliament, that is directly elected by you and me. The number of members of the European Parliament, or MPs, for each country is roughly proportionate to its population, as no country can have fewer than 6 MPs, such as is the case of Malta, or more than 96 MPs, such as the case of Germany, with the total number not exceeding 750 plus the president. The MPs are grouped by political affiliation rather than by nationality. Each member state adds its voting method, so for example, while Lithuania uses an open list system with preferential voting, France uses closed lists. I will leave a link on how to vote in the description of the video so you may see in more detail the way each country votes. But was it always like this? The first direct elections to the European Parliament were in 1979. Prior to that, the Parliament was torn into concentrating in acquiring institutional power or develop a direct election system, as their lack of actual power would pose it as an interest deterrent regarding its elections. During the first decades of European integration, however, the Parliament's role was chiefly consultative. Thus, there was a firm belief that by holding direct elections, it would provide the Parliament with a political authority to which would be impossible to deny the extension of institutional powers. Even though the Commission, for example, fully supported the Parliament's ambitions, MPs put great effort into decoupling the debates on organizing Parliament direct elections from those on expanding its institutional powers. MPs' main fear was that coupling both in a package deal would be too much for member state governments to swallow, creating a risk of ending up with neither. The right of initiative and the right to appoint the European Commission were listed in the report on the tasks and powers of the European Parliament in 1963, as necessary changes to be made in order for the European Parliament to become a real parliament. And as of recent years, the European Parliament has continuously been attempting at tying the elections and Parliament's authority as elected body to its power to appoint the European Commission and have a meaningful impact on the EU decision-making. The first major expansion of the European Parliament's power after the 1970s happened with the Single European Act in 1986, in which the cooperation procedure in certain policy areas was introduced, as well as the accent procedure of accession and association treaties. It is also with the Single European Act that the title European Parliament became official, previously named Common Assembly. Then, in the Maastricht Treaty in 1992, the Parliament's position was further consolidated with the introduction of the co-decision procedure, whilst strengthening its powers of scrutiny over the European Commission. Whilst the Amsterdam and Nice treaties expanded the Parliament's legislative and supervisory powers, the Lisbon Treaty in 2007 provided a major expansion regarding the co-decision procedure of all major European policy areas, putting the Parliament on equal footing with the Council of the EU. So what exactly does the European Parliament do, and why does it matter in the context of the EU? Whilst in the past the European Parliament role was mostly just consultative, it now has three main roles. A legislative role in which decides on international agreements and enlargements, passes EU laws alongside the Council of the EU, and reviews the Commission work programme. The Parliament can also ask the Commission to propose legislation. A supervisory role in which it scrutinizes all EU institutions, questions the Council of the EU and Commission, discusses monetary policies with the European Central Bank, and approves the way EU budgets are spent. It also examines citizen petitions and sets up inquiries, elects the Commission President, and approves the Commission as a whole, in which has the possibility of voting a motion of censure, thus obliging the European Commission to resign. And finally, a budgetary role, in which together with the Council, the European Parliament establishes the EU budget and also approves the EU's long-term budget, the multi-annual financial framework. So whilst in the past the Parliament had mostly just a consultative status, it now takes decisions on European laws jointly with the Council of the EU and approves the EU budget. In other instances, it has to give advisory opinion, in which in some particular cases might have to be favorable, obligatory opinion. The Parliament's main role, so to speak, is to represent the interests of the people, whilst in a more generalized view, the Council represents the member states or government's interests. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, as it helps the growth of this channel. And I hope this video has helped you understand at least a little bit better what the European Parliament does and represents. My sources are linked below, and I highly advise you to explore them and further your knowledge on the EU and its institutions and action. As an afternote, I want to finish this video with a sort of an appeal, not just regarding the upcoming European elections, but rather all and any elections you have a chance to participate in. I know perfectly well the feeling of what does it matter? Everything stays always the same. All of them, political parties and candidates, are bad, and so on. I know it because I still struggle with that same feeling. But truth is, if we do not act, then we cannot expect any change. Change must come from us, and often the act of not voting can be seen as complacency that benefits a few, rather than an active act of dissatisfaction. Your life belongs only to yourself. Don't let others make decisions for you. Ride the wave rather than letting it drag you aimlessly. And remember that everything big was once small. You don't go from never exercising to suddenly participating in the biggest marathon. Stay safe.
Moi, je garde ça dans le fond de mon cœur depuis des années. J'y pense tous les matins, mais j'en parle pas. Eh bien, Robin, c'est que je ne devrais pas être ici aujourd'hui. J'aurais dû être morte le 17 juin 1940.
Na 21. jsem měla telefon, že nás obsazuje armáda. Což jsme považovali za něco, že to vůbec není možné. To byl takový šok.
How do you feel about what's happened here in Prague?
We hope that we will have again the freedom and our democracy.
J'avais 11 ans quand la guerre a commencé et 12 quand les soldats sont arrivés. Il y en avait partout. Je descends mes 10 marches avec mon compotier, j'arrive dans le jardin, ta 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 ta. Maman a été tuée sur moi pour me protéger. Vous savez, quand on a 12 ans qu'on se relève avec sa maman morte qui vous protège, on n'oublie pas.
în Timișoara s-a atras în tineret în fața catedralei.
Mijn vader is Auschwitz gestuurd en daar vermoord. En mijn moeder kon mij meegeven in de wetenschap dat ze misschien mij nooit meer terug zou zien. Ik had geen ooms en tantes, dat vond ik wel raar. Ik had ook geen grootouders. Iedereen had grootouders. Ik had niemand.
Non si deve mai dare per scontato la democrazia, ma bisogna sempre sostenerla e proteggerla.
To 17. listopadu, kdy všechno začalo. Byla veliká demonstrace studentů. Policisté napadli demonstranty, zmlátili je. To byl ten moment, kdy začala tā revoluce, takzvaná.
Pēc neatkarības atgūšanas Latvija bija brīva zeme. Cilvēki varēja brīvi izteikt savas domas par demokrātiju.
Ma col muro di Berlino, secondo me, l'emancipazione di tutta l'Europa.
Lieve Suzanne, lieve Suus.
Jsem ráda, že jsi takový, jaký jsi, a za to tě mám moc ráda.
Je weet, ik ben geboren in een jaar dat de wereld in brand stond. Zoiets bepaalt voor een groot deel je leven. Gelukkig ben jij geboren in een tijd van vrede en welvaart.
Pořád si uvědomovat, že ta svoboda a demokracie tady nebyla vždycky. A že o ní můžeme strašně rychle přijít.
Bisogna lottarla per ottenerla. Bisogna sempre stare vigili e lottare.
Si je peux laisser un message avant de partir, vivez la démocratie. Entendez-vous les uns les autres.
Passt gut auf die Demokratie auf, wenn ich nicht mehr bin.
Je to na mě a je to na nás, na naší generaci. V Evropě.